Life is a series of choices. Each decision, no matter how small, sends ripples through the fabric of time. These ripples intersect, creating the tapestry of our existence. But what happens when fate takes the reins? When we find ourselves standing at crossroads not of our making? The choices we make then in those moments of destiny can have consequences far beyond our understanding. This is a story of such a choice. A choice made by 5 strangers bound by circumstance and a shared yearning for change. Their journey takes them to the fog-laden town of Millbrook, where the line between the real and the surreal blurs, and the consequences of their actions echo through eternity. Nestled amidst rolling hills and shrouded in an eternal blanket of fog, Millbrook held an air of eerie stillness. The fog was so dense that it seemed to swallow the town whole, creating an almost otherworldly atmosphere. The rolling hills, covered in a thick layer of mist, added to the town's mysterious allure, making it a place that felt both enchanting and haunting at the same time. It was the kind of town time seemed to have forgotten. The streets were empty, and the buildings stood as silent witnesses to a bygone era. The vintage architecture, with its intricate details and old-world charm, told stories of a time long past, when the town was bustling with life and activity. The buildings were old, their brick facades weathered and worn. Each brick seemed to hold a piece of history, a fragment of the lives that once thrived within these walls. The historic town buildings, though now abandoned, still exuded a sense of grandeur and resilience, standing tall against the passage of time. Gas lamps flickered, casting long, dancing shadows on the deserted streets. The soft, golden glow of the lamps created an eerie yet beautiful contrast against the thick fog, making the night streets look like a scene from a Gothic novel. The shadows seemed to move with a life of their own, adding to the town's mysterious ambience. The silence was broken only by the distant barking of a dog and the rustling of leaves in the wind. These sounds, though faint, echoed through the empty streets, amplifying the sense of solitude and abandonment. The occasional bark of the dog was a reminder that life still existed in this forgotten town, even if it was just a lonely canine. The fog, thick and heavy, seemed to muffle all sound, creating an atmosphere of isolation. It was as if the town was wrapped in a cocoon of silence, cut off from the rest of the world. The heavy fog not only obscured vision, but also seemed to absorb any noise, making the town feel even more secluded and mysterious. It was in this town, on a night like any other, that 5 strangers found themselves drawn to a peculiar bookstore. The bookstore, with its dimly lit windows and ancient wooden door, stood out against the foggy backdrop. It was a place that seemed to call out to them, beckoning them to enter and discover its secrets. A place that held the key to their deepest desires and the beginning of their unsettling fate. The interior of the bookstore was filled with rows upon rows of old, dusty books, each one holding a story waiting to be uncovered. The dim light cast long shadows on the bookshelves, creating an atmosphere of intrigue and mystery. It was here, in this enigmatic bookstore, that their journey into the unknown would begin. The bookstore stood at the edge of town, a solitary sentinel against the encroaching fog. It was a place shrouded in mystery, where the whispers of the past seemed to linger in the air, mingling with the mist that rolled in from the surrounding hills. Its sign, barely visible in the dim light, read, "The Antiquarian's Den." The letters, worn and faded, hinted at the countless stories and secrets that lay within its walls, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to enter. The windows were dark, save for a single flickering candle that cast an eerie glow on the dusty books piled high in the window display. The candle's flame danced and wavered, as if it were alive, casting long shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. A shiver ran down Mary's spine as she reached for the tarnished doorknob. The cold metal sent a jolt through her fingers, and for a moment she hesitated, wondering if she should turn back. But the pull of the unknown was too strong to resist. She had never been one for such places, but something, a force she couldn't explain, compelled her to enter. It was as if the bookstore itself was calling to her, whispering promises of answers and revelations just beyond the threshold. The others, drawn by the same unseen force, followed closely behind. Each of them carried their own burdens, their own questions, and the hope that within the walls of the Antiquarian's den they might find the solace or the answers they sought. There was John, his face etched with disappointment, clutching his worn-out sketchbook. He had spent years searching for inspiration, for a spark to reignite his passion for art, and he hoped that perhaps in this forgotten place he might find it. Emily, her eyes red-rimmed with grief, clutched a faded photograph to her chest. The image of her lost loved one was her only connection to the past, and she prayed that the bookstore held some clue, some fragment of hope that could ease her sorrow. Thomas, his shoulders slumped with despair, fiddled nervously with his empty wallet. He had lost everything, and the weight of his failures pressed heavily upon him. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that the Antiquarian's den held the key to a new beginning. And Susan, her eyes sparkling with a desperate hope, clutched a crumpled script. She had poured her heart and soul into her writing, and she believed that within the pages of the old books she might find the inspiration to bring her story to life. Each of them, drawn by the same mysterious force, stepped into the dimly lit bookstore, their hearts filled with a mixture of fear and anticipation, ready to uncover the secrets that lay hidden within the Antiquarian's den. Mary had always lived a quiet life. Day after day, she dusted bookshelves and helped patrons find their desired reads. Her own existence felt as mundane as the dewy decimal system she so meticulously maintained. She longed for excitement, for adventure. Her heart yearned for a life less ordinary, a life filled with passion and purpose. As she stepped into the Antiquarian's den, the scent of old paper and leather enveloped her. A sense of peace, a feeling of coming home washed over her. Little did she know this sanctuary of words held the key to a destiny far wilder than she could have ever imagined. Section 5. John, the failed artist. John clutched his sketchbook, his knuckles white. It contained his dreams, his aspirations, all of which seemed to be fading with each passing day. He had come to Millbrook seeking inspiration. His art, once vibrant and full of life, now felt lifeless and dull. He longed to recapture the passion he once felt, to see the world again through an artist's eyes. The fog that clung to Millbrook seemed to mirror the fog that had settled over his creative spirit. The Antiquarian's den, with its promise of forgotten lore and hidden knowledge, beckoned him like a beacon in the night. Section 6. Emily, the grieving widow. Emily hadn't planned on visiting a bookstore. It was a detour she hadn't anticipated, a sudden impulse that drew her in. She was on her way home from the cemetery, the weight of her grief a heavy cloak on her shoulders. Each step she took felt like a struggle, her heart aching with every beat. The photograph she clutched was her only solace. The face of her late husband, a bittersweet reminder of her loss. She often found herself staring at it, lost in memories of happier times when his laughter filled their home. She had heard whispers in town about the Antiquarian's den, about its proprietor's rumoured ability to grant wishes. The stories seemed far-fetched, but in her state of despair, she was willing to believe in anything that might bring her comfort. Desperation, that cruel temptress, had led her here. She felt a strange mix of hope and fear as she pushed open the door, the bell above it chiming softly. She didn't believe in magic, but the pain of her loss was too great, the silence of her home too deafening. The emptiness echoed around her, a constant reminder of what she had lost. She longed to hear his voice again, to feel his touch, even if it was just an illusion. The thought of seeing him, even in a dream, was enough to drive her to the bookstore, to seek out the impossible. As she wandered through the aisles, her fingers brushed against the spines of countless books, each one a potential key to her heart's desire. She felt a glimmer of hope, a tiny spark in the darkness of her grief. The shopkeeper, an enigmatic figure with kind eyes, listened to her story. He didn't promise miracles, but he offered her a book, one that he claimed held the answers she sought. Clutching the book to her chest, Emily left the store with a renewed sense of purpose. She didn't know what lay ahead, but for the first time in a long while she felt a flicker of hope. Section 7. Thomas, the bankrupt businessman. Thomas had lost everything. His business, his life savings, his home. He had arrived in Millbrook a broken man, his dreams shattered, his future uncertain. He wandered the fog-laden streets aimlessly, his despair growing with each step. The Antiquarian's den, with its warm glow and the promise of forgotten treasures, offered him a moment of respite from the harsh reality of his situation. He didn't know what he was looking for, but he hoped that within the dusty shelves and forgotten tomes he might find some answers, some guidance, some glimmer of hope. Section 8. Susan, the aspiring actress. Susan clutched her script, the words blurring beneath her fingertips. She had come to Millbrook to escape the rejections, the constant struggle, the crushing weight of her unfulfilled dreams. She yearned for the stage, for the applause, for the chance to bring characters to life. But the theatre world was a fickle mistress, and so far she had only tasted disappointment. The Antiquarian's den, with its air of mystery and intrigue, called to her. Perhaps within its walls she would find the key to unlocking her talent, the missing piece of the puzzle that was her life.